All right, let's look at how to graph this piecewise function. This is kind of a more interesting one because it has the three pieces and only one of them is linear. So we have a root here and we have a quadratic. But let's start as we always do. We're going to start by getting our domain and our fence line squared away. So we know that at x equals -1, we're going to switch functions. And also at x equals 3. So let's get those fence lines going. Right, and then we have three functions. So if x is less than -1, we're using y is equal to the square root of -x. If we're between -1 and 3, we're using y is equal to 3 minus x. And then if we're greater than 3, we're going to use y is equal to the quantity x minus 3 squared. Okay, let's start by graphing the linear piece because we're pretty good at that by now. Our y-intercept is 3 here. And then our slope is a -1. So I go down 1, over 1. I keep going until I hit the fence line, and then I put a hollow dot on both edges of the fence line. We'll come back and deal with those hollow dots. Okay, so there's that one. We have this x minus 3 squared, so we know that that's going to be some sort of parabola looking thing. We could start plugging in like x equals 4, x equals 5, and plug and chug that. But maybe a nicer solution would be to use our calculator. So if I go to this y equals, this equation editor, and I put in x minus 3 quantity squared, I now have the function there. I could look at the plot, but what might be more useful is actually to look at a table of values. So I'd like my table to start at 3, because that's where this particular function starts at, and I'll just have it go by ones, just to make it easy to plot. And I'll activate the table. So it tells me when x is 3, y is 0, which is right here. When x is 4, I get a 1. And when x is 5, this thing is equal to 4. Okay, so it gives me 3 dots there. And since I do know that this is a parabola, or I could look at the graph, I know it's got this kind of curve to it. So it'll look like this. We'll come back and deal with that hollow dot in a minute. And then we need this one for the square root of -x. So I'm going to do the same thing with my calculator. So I'll do y equals, and I'll put in the square root of -x. Okay, so use that negative key down at the bottom here to do that. And then this one, I want it for values less than -1. So my graph over here starts at -5. So I think what I'll do is set my table to -5 and just have it go up by ones. And so when I have x is -5, I get y is equal to about 2 1/4. So I can put that mark on here. At -4, this thing is equal to 2. So put that dot on. About 1.75, about a little shy of 1.5, and then at -1, I get a 1. Okay, so something kind of along there. And then in terms of what that actually looks like, so that square root function, if you're not familiar, has kind of that curved look to it. So we'll draw kind of a curved line connecting these. Okay. And then let's color in our dots and we'll be done with this sketch. So I have no equal sign here and no equal sign on this -1 either. So neither of these fence line dots gets colored because there's no equal sign. Over here, there is an equal sign, so it's coming from the middle part. So that middle part, this circle at x equals 3 is going to get colored in. All right, and so there is a graph of our function.